My plans to break up with Richard were ruined countless times. I tried to do it quickly, like ripping off a band-aid. We were at a park, and I tried to end it with witnesses around. Richard saw my ring and asked how I got it back. I was too busy stumbling over my words I completely forgot my mission. I attempted to text him later, but he invited me to dinner at his house. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't turn down the chance to see Mr. Edison again. I rushed to my dorm to find the perfect outfit to grab Roger's attention. It was tacky, but I settled on a checkerboard skirt and a fitted top that had a little rook stitched on the breast pocket. I know it's stupid, but Mr. Edison plays chess. In my mind, I thought wearing the outfit would make him want to play with me. Unfortunately, Roger wasn't even home. That evening I was uncomfortably sitting in their living room, listening to music and drinking imported beer. Richard had attempted to cook, which was so sweet of him. He earned brownie points for that. But even if he didn't burn the roast, I was planning on breaking up with him. He ordered us a pizza, and I became nervous when he sat next to me. We were sitting thigh to thigh, and I was feeling vulnerable all of a sudden. I inhaled deeply, preparing to tell him it was over when he asked me to dance. Maybe it was the buzz I was feeling from the alcohol, or I was just looking to soften the blow, but I decided to go along with it. We were swaying together, and it was nice. Unlike other times we were alone, I didn't feel an odd tension. We were just two people dancing with no ulterior motive. As sweet as the moment was, my brain couldn't deny what I wanted. Or rather, who I wanted, Mr. Roger Edison. He was all I thought about, no matter what I was doing. When I was in the shower this morning he came to my mind. When I was sitting in class, I scribbled his name all over my notebook. I nearly tripped in the dining hall when another student called his body Roger. I just couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Edison and what he did. But it was more than just watching him that night that made me dizzy. It was the way he smiled when he caught me. It was him constantly insisting I call him Roger. And let's not forget my ring that he came all over. I wear it more than usual now. There was a knock on the door, interrupting our dance. He excused himself to answer it, and I grabbed my drink and headed to the kitchen. I assumed it was the pizza, but when Richard came back he had some guy with him. There was no pizza in hand, and the guy looked quite questionable. Richard gave me an apologetic look. We have some quick business to handle. I'll be right back. He kissed me before he led the stranger upstairs. I guess this was some more hacker stuff. I learned a long time ago to stay out of the way of criminals. I slowly sipped the last of my beer as I walked around the first floor. It didn't take long for me to end up outside the study. I stood there leaning against the door and contemplating if I should enter Mr. Edison's private space. I stood there for what felt like an hour, debating with myself and trying to get my legs to work. It felt like I was walking into a secret, and the anticipation in the pit of my stomach made me anxious. I sat down in his chair, reclining into the warm padding. The air of the room had his cologne and lingering cigar smoke. I put the beer bottle on the end table next to his chessboard. There was a magazine tucked under the edge of the board. I gently pulled it out to look it over. It was an old gentleman mags. The open page showed a model with brown skin, dark curly hair, and dressed like a maid. I'm no model, but I look pretty similar to her. I could see the page was warped. I got a tingle thinking Mr. Edison had masturbated to this image. I glanced down at my ring, remembering how his penis had swollen in his hand, and the way he stroked it. My face felt warm and the rest of my body responded. I listened for Richard, not wanting to get caught by him. When I didn't hear anything, I slipped my hand under my skirt and down my underwear. The warmth of the chair was so comforting as if Mr. Edison was behind me. I imagined myself sitting on his lap while he reclined in the chair, his arms around my waist and his hand between my legs. I moaned, face feeling flushed as I squirmed in the chair. My nipples hardened, poking through my shirt. It was a bra-free day. I tugged my collar down to expose a boob. I imagined Mr. Edison's mouth sucking my nipple as I tugged on it. My brain was going wild with different fantasies. I wanted him between my legs, licking my breasts, and stroking deep inside of me. I fingered myself faster, imagining his weight on top of me, slipping another finger in. I bit my bottom lip, trying to be quiet in case Richard came back downstairs. I knew this was the final push I needed to break up with Richard. I just couldn't get his father off my mind. I wanted Mr. Edison to tell me how much he wanted me, how he just had to take me right there and now. My heart was racing at the thought of him groaning in my ear. My breath was coming out in short gasps as I fingered myself faster. I could feel my juices rolling down into the seat. I know it was risky to finish right there, plus have to clean up after, but I just couldn't stop myself. Oh God, it slipped out my mouth. I arched and lifted my hips toward the imaginary older man between my thighs. Please, Mr. Edison. I thought we agreed you'd call me Roger? My eyes flew open before I heard his voice. I felt Mr. Edison's breath on my cheek and jumped at the warm air. I turned my head to see him leaning into the chair, a smirk on his face. I thought we agreed you'd call me Roger? My eyes flew open before I heard his voice. I felt Mr. Edison's breath on my cheek and jumped at the warm air. I turned my head to see him leaning into the chair, a smirk on his face, eyes on my hand between my legs. I cannot believe he just caught me masturbating, in his chair, in his private room, and saying his name while I did it. I am so sorry. I pulled my hand away and snapped my legs closed. I leap out of the chair as I fixed my top. I couldn't imagine what was worse. Him seeing me trying to get off in his private space. Or hearing me call his name while I did it. I could feel my face burning as I looked for a way out of the room. The door was shut with a briefcase sitting beside it. I avoided eye contact even as I tiptoed toward him. Mr. Edison, I am so sorry. I'll just leave, and you can tell Richard. What exactly? Roger had a smirk on his face. I could tell him what I caught you doing. I doubt my boy would like that. His eyes went to the chair. A small damp spot was there from where I sat today. The magazine was still open on top of the chessboard. He stepped forward, making me step back. His eyes swept over me before landing on my wet hand. His eyes moved up my body. Standing over me, I could tell he was looking at my chest. I'm sorry, I apologized, crossing my arms over my breasts. I shouldn't, I wasn't snooping, I promise, I just... Did you enjoy yourself? He asked. I peeked up and met him eye to eye. Did you finish? Mr. Edison took my hand, lifting it up. My jaw nearly hit the floor when he flicked his tongue over my fingertip. Mr. Edison. If you're going to say my name, he interrupted me. Call me Roger. Roger? I whispered it, and he stepped closer. My back is against the wall. Mr. Edison was right on my chest. He sucked my fingers into his mouth. I got another tingle in the pit of my stomach imagining his skilled tongue working lower on my body. You taste, he groaned, releasing my fingers from his mouth. So distracted by his mouth, I forgot about his other hand until it grazed my butt underneath my skirt. Delicious. My embarrassment started to fade but turned into guilt. I should go. Looking down at me, he pressed his forehead to mine. Why so soon? I explained poorly, not even convincing myself. Mr. Edison held up his hand. My ring was back on his finger. This time, though, he also had my silver bracelet hanging from his pointer finger. How did you? I grabbed my now bare wrist. He lowered his voice. If you want something, take it. My fear faded almost immediately. My jaw tightened as I nibbled on my bottom lip. What was it about him stealing from me that turned me on so much? I think it was the fact he had such talented hands. He was close to me, speaking so boldly and making me brave. Out of nowhere I gripped Roger's shirt and tugged it towards me. My lips smashed against his, and his mouth responded. His tongue teased my lips before slipping inside my mouth. Mr. Edison deepened the kiss, effortlessly moving his tongue over my inexperienced one. You never answered my question. He pulled back, hands still on my chest. What question? I was breathless. Did you get off when you were just wanking in my chair? I bit my lip, cheeks feeling warm. His accent was getting to me again. I didn't even know when my leg hooked up around his thigh. I was slowly grinding the front of my skirt against his crotch. No, came out softly. Can you help me, Mr. Edison? His jaw clenched, and I heard him groan. Do you think you can handle me, little girl? Not at all, I answered honestly. But I want you anyway. He grinned before kissing me again. My arms wrapped around his neck. At that moment, I forgot where I was and who I was trying not to hurt. All I wanted was to be with Roger. I craved his hands, his body, on me. His hands moved over my curves. Roger groped my butt and moved up to squeeze my breasts. My hands made quick work of his scarf and jacket. They fell off his shoulders and on the floor. I started to undo the buttons on his shirt when Roger lifted me. My legs wrapped around his waist, and he pressed me back against the wall. One of the frames on the wall fell to the floor, cracking the glass. Roger covered my neck in kisses while his hands slid beneath my shirt. Roger, his name came out of my mouth softly. I was lost in the moment. Until... Yolanda? Richard's voice echoed through the first floor of the house. Where'd you go? Are you in the bathroom? Yeah. I slithered out of Mr. Edison's arms, fixing my clothes as guilt stabbed me in the chest. I'll be right out. I ran to the bathroom door. Roger was right on my heels, holding the door open before I could close it. The guilt was unbearable, and I suddenly was too shy to make eye contact. I opened my mouth, but I couldn't muster a proper sentence. My teeth sank into my bottom lip while I struggled to think of something. When will you be back? Mr. Edison spoke first. I can't come back. Not just to this room. I can't come to your house again. I whispered, hoping Richard wasn't listening at the other door. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression of me. He sighed deeply, yet his expression stayed calm and neutral. Mr. Edison stepped closer, pressing his lips to my forehead. Until next time, Yolanda. My eyes widened. Didn't you hear me? I can't do this again. Roger smiled as he nodded. He pushed the door closed, and I stepped back. What did I just get myself into?